Welcome to a wee Halloween tale. Samhain night. Isn't that the time when the doors to the other world stand wide open? Humans and spirits mingle. Could it be that those worlds are like one world always? We just notice it more in times of transition, when the threshold is low. Like now, from summer to winter, like day to night, when the sun floods the world with golden light. It was dark all around and very quiet. The only thing you could hear was the crackling of flame. You saw the faces lit up by everyone standing around the fire. There was no wind, and the forest stood still. The damp was rising from the earth, like little wet fingers touching. It was eerie, Leah thought. To her relief, she spotted her friend across the flames, opposite her. How could she draw her attention? Leah started to pull faces, and her friend noticed immediately, rolled her eyes and bared her teeth. They made scary and spooky faces. They squealed and howled. They had so much fun. They used their hands and arms, their whole bodies, to be trolls and giants and ghosts and wolves. They didn't notice that everyone was watching them. And then someone picked up a drum, another a fiddle, and soon the whole community of people was dancing and jumping around the fire like giants, squealing and growling and hooting like owls, subtle and mysterious. And suddenly the drum stopped. Everyone took hands and started to sing. The most joyous song Leah had ever heard. All the fear was gone. All these warm and courageous hearts joined together. It was as if the heavens opened and gave a blessing for the new year, pouring it down through them and into the earth. Winter could come now. There was nothing to fear. They would all stand together. Everyone picked up a branch or some glowing embers to light the fire at home anew. Reaching the house, Leah said to her mum, "I'll light a candle for Granny," and slipped away into the garden, looking for the perfect spot. Her eyes fell upon the hill beyond the garden. Climbing over the wall, she walked into the forest and up the hill, set herself down on a rock and gazed at the stars, thinking about all the beautiful things she had done with her grandma when she was alive. And then she started to hear all the sweet music in the forest all around. and remembered. The hollow hills are open tonight. I'd love to feast with the fairies. And it was as if she was there, seeing it all, hearing it all, joining in. When dark clouds gathered in the sky and covered the moon, it became very dark, and fear started to creep into Leah. The spooky spirits are out too. What if they scare me to death? What if I ask you, what are you afraid of? I dare you, tell me. Tell your friend. Hold their hand if you must. And then the hill under Leah started to move and shake and lift up. Leah tried to hold on to the grass, but it slid down and landed on the forest floor. She'd been sitting on a troll. Hide! I need to hide! Frantically, she was running around looking for cover. In that moment, the moon came back out and the troll spotted her, picking her up on one leg, dangling her upside down in front of its face. Leah looked into this huge, weird eyes and had this ginormous, ugly nose with hair growing out of it and out of its ears, grass growing out of the wart on the chin. The troll peered at her, made a grunting noise and opened its mouth. Leah stared into this dark cave full of pointy black teeth. Oh, and this foul smell of rot and decay from the bowels of the earth made her gasp. She started screaming and kicking and bit into those fingers hot as stone. In shock, the gnome dropped her, and she ran. She ran further and further into the forest. But she ran in the wrong direction. She didn't care, just wanted to get away. Until she found herself in the haunted part of the forest, or the hurting part of the forest. The spirits here were not fond of humans. And that's why didn't the people cut down the ancient oak grove and the sacred apple tree? Didn't they know that every 7 years a golden apple grew that cured all ailments? Every child knew, but the adults seemed to forget. Are you afraid of the dark night of the soul? And there was Leah, stumbling into their midst, trembling on everything. What did they do? What would you do? They pushed her and they pulled her and they growled and they howled to scare her, to dare her, until she could not bear it any longer and broke free, running for her life. Exhausted, she collapsed, far away from everywhere. It started to rain. With her last strength, she crawled into a cave. And there she lay on the bare rock, cold and wet and alone. Could it get any worse? When something tapped on her shoulder, she ignored it. Then that something tapped on her shoulder again, and she shrugged it off. She had enough. And then that something pulled her arm. What do you want? And then she saw at the back of the cave was a gateway, golden light pouring forth. Next to it stood a gnome, waving her towards it. Looking at the friendly gnome and the gateway, Leah walked into the other world. The sun shone into her face and warmed her through and through. A meadow spread out in front of her, and light like a butterfly, she danced among the flowers. And there, under a tree, sat her grandmother. Leah ran towards her and fell into her arms. "You're safe now," said her grandmother, and stroked her hair. "Thank you for thinking of me tonight. It made my whole world shine brighter." "I've got something for you," said Leah, opened her heart and plucked a flower. Grandmother breathed in this heavenly fragrance, and there was a golden glow about her for a while. Leah sank deeper and deeper into her loving embrace. After what seemed like a long time, Grandma said, "Time to go back." Standing by the gateway, Leah hesitated. The grandmother reassured her, "I'll walk you home." On the other side, the gnome was waiting. "I didn't know you had made a new friend," said Grandma. And together, the three of them wandered about the forest, which was peaceful now and magical. Coming towards the house, the gnome said its goodbye. "See ya." And Granny knocked on the door. The door opened. "Look, Mum, Grandma is here." But there was nobody to be seen. And yet, Leah felt her holding her hand. And Grandmother whispered into her ear, "Tell your mum I love her." "Come on in, Leah. Supper's ready." "What?" Dazzled, Leah sat down at the table and started to tell her story. But suddenly she stopped and dropped her spoon on the table. "Weren't you wondering where I was? Were you not going to look for me? Sure, I was gone for hours." Her father looked up. Leah, you were only gone a little while. We rekindled the fire, cooked the supper, laid the table. Oh, we know you'll like your adventures. And then we heard the knock on the door. I don't believe it, said Leah. Ah, added her brother. Time's speeding up when your imagination goes wild. Later that evening, Leah whispered into her mother's ear. Granny says she loves you. Ah, thank you. I know. I've met her in my dreams. And together they lit a candle for the grandmother and put it in the window. Later, during the night, Leah woke. The candle was shining bright like the stars. And beyond the garden, she saw the familiar hill with the little rock where she had sat. Strange, she muttered to herself. Fell back asleep and Leah dreamt of her grandmother. And she lay in her arms what seemed like forever.